Things like a bill of exchange or a promissory note, they can seem like just stuffy, formal pieces of paper. But there's so much more than that. Really, each one is a promise with its own life story, a whole journey with critical checkpoints, potential roadblocks, and a final destination. So today, let's follow the promise and the money on its official journey, from a simple signature all the way to a final settlement.
I mean, think about it. When you formalize an IOU, you're not just jotting something down on a napkin, right? You're creating a real legal path. So, what does that path actually look like? What are the official tests it has to pass before everyone can agree that the promise has been fulfilled? That's the map we're going to lay out today.
So, here's our roadmap. We'll kick things off with the promise itself, born on paper. Then, we'll watch it face its first big test, acceptance. After that comes the final hurdle, payment. We'll also dig into what happens when that promise gets broken, and finally, how the whole obligation gets wrapped up and comes to an end.
Okay, to make this all make sense, let's use a quick scenario. Imagine Company A needs to pay Company B, but instead of using its own cash, it wants to use money that its client, Company C, owes them. So Company A creates a bill of exchange. There's our promise, and it essentially tells Company C, hey, instead of paying me, you're going to pay Company B on this future date.
Now, the very first official move in this story is something called presentment. It sounds super formal, I know, but the idea is actually simple. It's the moment Company B, now holding the bill, officially goes to Company C and asks the big question, are you going to honor this promise? And as we can see here, presentment isn't just a one-time thing. The law actually outlines a few different reasons you do it. For our story, the two most important stops on this journey are the presentment for acceptance, right at the beginning, and then later on, the presentment for payment. And that brings us right to the first major checkpoint on our instrument's journey. See, before anyone can even think about getting paid, the promise has to be formally accepted by the person who's supposed to do the paying. In our little story, that's Company C. The moment Company B presents that bill, a legal stopwatch starts ticking. The law is very specific. It gives Company C, the drawee, a clear window, 48 hours, and that doesn't count public holidays, to think it over and decide whether to formally accept the responsibility. But here's where things get a little more interesting. When Company C says yes, does that always mean a simple, straightforward, yep, I will pay the full amount, on time, no problem? Well, as you can probably guess, not exactly. You see, the law actually recognizes two different kinds of acceptance. A general acceptance is exactly what it sounds like. It's that clean, no-strings-attached promise. But a qualified acceptance is more of a yes, but it's an acceptance that changes the original terms of the bill in some specific way. This yes, but can take a few different forms. It might be conditional, like, I'll pay, but only after the goods I ordered arrive. It could be partial, where they agree to pay only a fraction of the total amount. They could even change the time or place of payment, or if there are multiple people supposed to pay, maybe only some of them agree. Each one of these qualifications fundamentally changes the original promise, which is absolutely critical for the holder to know. So let's say our bill has passed its first test. It's been accepted, whether generally or with some qualifications. Now the journey moves towards its climax, the moment of truth, actually getting paid. And just like with acceptance, presenting for payment has a formal set of rules. You can't just casually ask for the money. You have to go to the right person, at the right place of business, during normal business hours, and most critically, on the exact day the payment is due. It's a precise legal act, not just a friendly reminder. But what happens when things go wrong? What happens when our financial promise reaches one of these critical tests and fails? Well, that's when we enter the territory of dishonor, which is the official legal term for a broken promise. A promise can be broken in too many ways, and they line up perfectly with the two tests we've been talking about. It can be dishonored by non-acceptance right at the start, if Company C just refuses to accept it, or it can be dishonored by non-payment, where Company C accepts the bill but then fails to pay up when the due date arrives. Now, this part is super important. The moment a bill is dishonored, the person holding it has a critical job. They have to give a formal notice of dishonor to all the other parties involved, like Company A. And trust me, failing to give this notice is a huge deal. It could actually let those other parties completely off the hook for their liability. Now, to take this a step further and get undeniable official proof of the dishonor, you can get something called a protest. Just think of it as a formal, legally certified document from a notary public that says, for the record, this promise was presented and it was officially broken. This certificate becomes crucial evidence if you ever need to take legal action.
And this isn't always optional. While getting a protest is a smart move for domestic bills, the source material is crystal clear. For foreign bills, meaning those drawn or payable outside the country, it is mandatory. It's an absolute requirement if you want to preserve your legal rights. All right, so after this whole long journey of acceptance, payment, and maybe even dishonor, how does the story finally end? How are the parties involved finally freed or discharged from all their legal obligations? Well, the simplest, happiest ending is, of course, payment. The promise is fulfilled, the debt is paid. But the obligation can also end if the holder decides to intentionally cancel a party's name right off the instrument, or if they formally release them from their obligation. And sometimes, the law itself can end the story. For example, if too much time passes, the debt can become legally uncollectible. And that brings our journey to a close. We started with a simple promise on paper and followed it through a whole legal path with really clear rules and very real consequences. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our world of instant digital payments and crypto, why does this structured, centuries-old framework for financial promises still hold so much weight in commerce and law? It's really a testament to the enduring power of a promise when it's properly made and legally defined.